One of the things we're going to try to do for this session of Dream Lab, we're going to go through some dreams. And as we interpret the dreams, and as you interpret the dreams, I just want to invite you to think about how would you say the answer to this dream to somebody that doesn't know Christianese. The average person, now, I mean, we live in Dallas-Fort Worth, and I know most of you don't live in Dallas-Fort Worth. In Dallas-Fort Worth, everybody knows Christianese, well, 90% do know Christianese. But I lived in Boston for a while. I had to use a different language up there. It's still American, and I know it's not English if you live in the UK. It is American, but it is a very different language when you're up there than when you're in the church. And what's happened to most of us is we're so used to being around other believers and using certain words that we don't understand what it means. I mean, we have these words that we have context for, but they don't mean something to the person that we're reaching. And the first thing that any missionary that's going into a new culture learns is the language. You've got to learn the language if you actually want to speak to the people. And if that means that you go because nobody can teach you that language and you just begin to learn how to communicate, you've got to figure out how to communicate in a way that they hear, not the way that you want to talk. Yeah. And when it comes to our explanation of spiritual things and our explanation of dreams that we interpret, when we're talking with somebody else in the church, it's great to use language that's common to them. But when you're talking to your coworker, right, when you're talking to your uncle that doesn't want to have anything to do with church, when you're talking to that person at Barnes & Noble because you're just trying to practice dream interpretation and you give them an interpretation of the dream, if you use language that they don't understand, they're not going to get the interpretation. You can interpret the dream and still not be helpful. And so we're going to practice as we go through, and we're going to go through a number of dreams, and you'll probably see this as the intro on more than one episode, because we're going to do a number of dreams, and the goal of each of these, we want to just bring a little bit of focus. How could we say this to somebody that does not have the Christian language that we have so that they can understand it? So what we're going to do is I'm going to get somebody here from the audience here in the lab, and I'm going to have them come up and share a dream. And once we shared that dream, I'm going to give you an opportunity to work through the interpretation while we work through it here. And then afterwards, we'll talk about what that dream might mean and give you some pointers to help you get a little bit better at understanding that dream and maybe some nuances that you might have missed or you might not have missed. So who has a dream? Carmen was our first hand. So Carmen, come on up. If you have been watching the lab, you know Carmen. I think she's been here almost every time when we've done the Dream Lab.
Almost. I'd like to preface this by saying I had this dream 2 years and 1 day ago, June the 13th, 2015. So I've been carrying this a while. That's why my hand shot up. Okay. At the time I wrote, I just dreamt that I was at a place where prophets hung out. Paul Keith Davis was there, and I looked up, and all of a sudden, Bob Jones came out of the bathroom. I said, Paul, do you see him? Do you see him? He said, yeah, I see him. Then there were several students there, and they all wanted a word from Bob Jones. I decided to get one too, so I went up with another girl. We held hands to pray, and Bob gave her a directional word and told her not to go, to the very place that I want to go. But he didn't tell me not to go. He said nothing about it. And in fact, I don't even believe he had a word for me. Then John Paul showed up in Paul Keith Davis's place. I was so excited to see John Paul. He was my friend, and I loved him. That's the end of the dream.
That's the end of the dream. All right, now, one of the tools you always want to do is try to repeat back the dream to the dreamer to make sure that what they said is actually what you heard. So, in this dream, you are in a place where prophets hang out, prophetic people hang out. And you're there, and Paul Keith Davis is also there. And you watch Bob Jones coming out of the bathroom. Now, if you don't have context, Bob Jones is a prophetic person, but at the time of this dream, Bob Jones had been passed away for about 16 months, about 16 to 17 months at this point in time. So that's context. Somebody that's passed away shows up. Bob Jones. So that's kind of important in our interpretation. So Bob Jones comes out of the bathroom and everybody's excited and you're telling Paul Keith, do you see him? Do you see him? He's like, yeah, I see him. And some of the students, they come and kind of get in a line because they want to get a word from Bob Jones. And you're like, that's a good idea. I should get a word too. And so you get in line as well. And
With another girl.
With one other girl. And he gives a word to this other girl that you're with. And it's a directional word. And in the directional word tells her that she's not supposed to go somewhere that you want to go. But he's not talking to you, he's talking to her. And you can't remember if he even gave you a word. There was nothing there.
In the dream, I thought, oh, shoot, if he said that to her, he's probably going to say it to me. And he didn't. He didn't even give me a word that I remember in the dream.
Okay, very good. And then that kind of scene switches, and Paul Keith is now John Paul, or John Paul is there in the place where Paul Keith was. It's now John Paul, and you're excited because, now again, in this dream, this is about 4 months after John Paul passed away. So you're really excited to see him. You're like, oh, John Paul's my friend, and that's where the dream ends. Okay, very good, thank you. Wonderful. Now, there's a lot of just some fun metaphors that are in this dream. And so what I want you to do is begin to think through, how would you title this dream? Who or what's the focus of the dream? What are your sub-focuses? What are your details? Go ahead and pause your video, work it out, maybe write it down on a piece of paper. And once you have an interpretation for this dream, go ahead and start your video again and see what we got here at the lab. Welcome back. We're getting ready to diagram this dream up here on the board. And let's start out with the title. What did you guys come up with as a title for this dream?
Stay tuned for more.
Stay tuned for more, okay? Anybody else?
Prophetic Hangout.
Prophetic Hangout. That's fun. That's nice and easy to write. I'll use that one. So. Don't you love that sound? Prophetic Hangout. All right. Now, who or what is the focus of our dream? Our men. I know, I'm loving that sound. And our sub-focuses.
Paul Keith Davis, John Paul.
The friends.
That could be a sub-focus. Somebody said, I'm using our initials here for everybody. And somebody else say something?
Bob Jones.
Bob Jones.
What about the friend?
It's making more noise than normal. I don't know why. Don't know why. So, off of here, we'll write friend.
Who was the friend? The girl?
The girl.
She wasn't my friend. She was just a person. Yeah, she was just a girl. I didn't know.
She was just another girl, so not specifically a friend, just.
Nameless, faceless to me.
All right. So, if you wrote friend, we'll just put student. Because it's too hard to erase that, just put a line through it. I made a mistake on the diagram.
Do you
Any-
have an eraser?
I do, but it's not easy.
Bob Jones came out of the bathroom. Do you want to?
Right.
Okay? The bathroom. That's detail. This we said was a detail. Anything else essential?
The directional word.
The word, yeah.
Okay, so there was a word given by Bob Jones to the student.
What
Okay.
about the line of students that were standing for ministry? Would it be kind of signified by the one student here?
Yeah, we'll use the student to represent that whole group of the other students that were lined up for this prophetic word. Yeah. Anything else?
Was Carmen and the girl holding hands?
Well, we were all holding hands to pray. They all persisted
Oh,
together.
okay,
Right.
okay.
We
All
were just
When-
in a time of prayer
Okay,
so that
okay.
he could prophesy.
Okay.
So
All right.
that's all it was.
So, yeah, so just making sure everybody, you hear what, so was Carmen holding hands with this person? So yes, but the context was all of the students that were coming up for prayer, they were all just holding hands just together for a prayer time, so.
And I think when Carmen saw John Paul Jackson, she felt like, he was a friend and
Yes. I'm going to put quotes just to say that was her expression, that was her thoughts, that was what she experienced. Oh, my friend. All right. Now, I think we've got enough to get the basic understanding of this dream. So we'll start with the centerpiece, because you always want to start in the middle and work your way out. Carmen, literal or symbolic? Literal. It's actually about her. So Carmen is literally about Carmen. Paul Keith Davis, literal or symbolic?
Symbolic.
Symbolic. What would Paul Keith represent? Prophetic. Now remember, it started, this was a place where the prophetic hang out. Right, so you have the context of prophetic, and so you're going to see a lot of prophetic that is related, and you're going to specifically see people that Carmen recognizes as being prophetic that she has received from or she looks up to in that particular arena.
Well, we need to add John Thomas in there somewhere.
I wasn't in the dream,
No, I'm
so you can't have me in there. So prophetic. So this is going to tie into this and to this. All right, it's not about the individual people, it's about what they represent. Okay. Now, if you leave out the fact that Bob Jones came out of the bathroom, does it change the plot of the dream?
No.
All right, so if you never figure out what that means and you just leave it out of the dream, it's not even going to change the interpretation of the dream. So we could talk in the bathroom, a lot of times we'll talk about cleansing. So there's an aspect of the prophetic needing to go through cleansing. That could be a possibility, but that will almost muddy up the dream and the interpretation more than it will help. So we don't need to put that in. All right, so all of the students line up to get a word from Bob Jones. Right, now, notice you have this interaction between the dreamer and Paul Keith Davis. Do you see him? He's there. Do you see him? And yeah, I see him. All right, and then everybody lines up. All the students line up. Now, the students line up. Who doesn't get a word? Carmen. That's important. Everybody else gets a word. Carmen didn't get a word. As soon as that happens, what's the next thing that happens? She sees John Paul. She goes, oh, I've got a friend. You're seeing that switch. All right. Now, I'm going to have just a couple of you come up and share what you got for your interpretation of the dream. So who wants to come up and...
question before that.
You've got a question. So let's... Questions we're bringing right up here. We've got our marker right here. We're making everybody get out here so you can actually see them and hear them when they give their questions. So
The question is, the fact that Carmen heard the word that the other girl received, and it somehow was connected with her in terms of saying that she heard the place that she was supposed to go to, and Bob Jones kind of giving a word that is on the negative in terms of saying don't go there. Does that have any significance of, even though despite the fact that she didn't receive a word personally by herself?
Yes. So it does have significance. Is it essential to the main point of the dream? Not essential, but it's definitely very helpful. So what would you think of that? What would that mean in a dream?
What we sensed while discussing was probably there was some kind of a connection. Maybe that girl whom Carmen was holding hands with, though she's not a friend or she doesn't know her from before, there could be a possibility that there's some connection there that girl would represent her, but that could be something that might be wrong as well. But that was what we kind of understood while we were discussing.
Right. Yeah. Now, and that raises up an interesting point. So when you have a dreamer in a dream, the dreamer actually represents themselves in the dream. Other people and other elements in the dream are going to very, very, very rarely ever represent the dreamer.
Right.
So you want to steer away from that as a rule, unless the Lord specifically says that that's the case. Now, the only cases where I've personally seen that is when there's literally split personalities. And then the different personalities can show up as different characters in the dream. Now, so it can be talking about something the dreamer needs to learn, but is not a part of the dreamer, if that will. But you have a little bit of a contrast that might point you in a different direction. Because of the contrast of everybody, all the students getting a word, right? But she's not getting a word.
Yes.
Now, what that word was, that has meaning. Right, she's looking for direction, and she's recognizing other people getting direction, even direction that would fit into her life, but she's realizing she's not getting that.
Right.
Right, so that would be that kind of that metaphor of that experience. But kind of the interesting twist is all the students lining up to get a word, and even this person right next to her gets a word, but she doesn't get a word, but she recognizes, yes, a friend.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So thinking on that, do you have an interpretation for the dream that you want to share? Now, I know I'm putting you on the spot, so feel free to say no.
All right. So I just shared whatever we kind of found out. I felt like it was we all kind of agreed upon this fact that there was, because of so many prophetic, people in the same place, it felt like a prophetic council. It felt like a place where there is serious prophetic ministry and there is serious dialogue with God that can occur because of the kind of people that were there, like John Paul Jackson, Bob Jones, or Paul Keith Davis, because they carry such a ministry upon them, right? They carried such a ministry as well. What I felt is that in that council, even Carmen is there. So it's really amazing that she's a part of that, somehow kind of part of that council. But when Bob Jones comes out of that bathroom, we kind of felt like it was a purified prophetic ministry that was in place. And the students that lined up before him, it felt like it denotes training. So which meant even when Carmen joined that line, even though she's part of that, say, the prophetic council, there is some training that she needs to go through as well, under an umbrella of purified prophetic ministry. And the wonderful part is, even though she didn't receive a word with respect to the direction in her life, I feel like the direction was friendship, because when she turned and saw the place where Paul Keith Davis was sitting, it was not Paul Keith Davis, it was John Paul Jackson, and she felt such a connection in that place. So it's almost like saying that she's not out of place if she finds herself in such intensified or powerful prophetic ministry group, or a council of prophets who walk in such a realm that maybe not normally is seen so often. She shouldn't feel herself or find herself out of place, because she has a friend in the midst of that prophetic council. And but there is training as well involved with it. That's what I understood.
Okay, thank you. Wow, great. Thank you. Yep. I'll release him. Anybody else? Anybody get another aspect of that? Another way of looking at it? Yeah, Gail, come on up. You knew I was going to do that to you.
I know. I was prepared. So I think that he added a lot that we didn't get. But just to add to what's already been said is we felt that the waiting in line was protocol, that she did what was just, she followed through on protocol and she waited in line. But when she got to the end and didn't get the word, that we thought maybe that signified that people around her or even very close to her, peer-wise, might get that word, that don't go word, but that she didn't get it. In other words, nothing has changed.
Okay.
So.
Okay. Now, before you go, I gotta ask you a question.
Okay.
How would you say that to somebody that doesn't know Christianese?
I would say something to the effect of you followed through on the things that were required of you, and you've shown a lot of respect, and you've shown respect for the protocol that's been required of you. And even that was a risk, because the people that were around you, that were near you, did get direction that you did not want to receive, but you were brave enough to ask the question. And so, but at the end of the day, nothing in your destiny has changed. You can still hold those desires. You can still ask those questions, that this friend of yours is still a friend, and this chapter hasn't closed.
Yeah. Very good. Wow. That was a great way of doing that. You guys practice that. Now, but also, I mean, realize how much thinking that it takes to communicate in that way, because we're so used to communicating with certain words. We need to actually take that time to think through how to do that, because if we practice it here, when we get out there, it'll be a lot easier. So, I mean, just taking a look at this dream. I mean, you have prophetic people. You have this place of community, this place where there's a lot of, there's giants, if you will, but you also have students. You have Carmen putting herself with the group of the students, but not getting what the students are getting. She's actually in relationship with the giants.
Yeah, that's right.
So now, how would you say that to somebody that is out on the streets? There's people that you've really looked up to for their spirituality and for their spiritual wisdom. And you still see yourself in a lot of ways in a place of a student, but you've actually been moved into a place of relationship with some of those giants that you've been looking up to. And while students may be getting directive words, you actually have that personal relationship to hear from God for yourself. So again, the same thing, just said in a different way, and thinking through how to say that in different ways is very important. But if you work through this dream and you got the main points, this is about the prophetic calling, that she's in that place of prophetic ministry, that there's other students that she's been in relationship or been along with, but that she has relationship. That's the keys. That's the main points of the dream. How you say that and the different points. I mean, I love bringing out the purified prophetic. I think that was gorgeous. That was really good. And then hearing that piece of, there's things that are in your heart that you're looking for, and God's is not putting a no to those things for you, even though other people have to do that. Their path is different than your path. That's a great piece. But the main piece of it is those feelings of, maybe, am I a student? No, you're a friend. You're a friend. And so that difference in perspective and how the dreamer sees themselves, that's kind of the main point for that. So any questions about this dream before we move on? Awesome. Thanks for joining us for this episode of Dream Lab. We will see you next month with another dream.